people live there. So in this case, Outlot B is intended mainly to be a common shared open space that staff anticipate to be maintained by an HOA rather than the city.
So just to clarify, and I can bring this up with the click share here, it might be helpful. So there's for modification reviews, there's 6 criteria. There's only 5 up here because one is that there's no additional dwelling units. But there isn't a requirement for open space.
All right, we'll just go ahead and get started and we can add people later. Good evening.
Recording in progress.
Today is September 18th, 2022, and this is the Historic Preservation Commission, and we will get a roll call, please.
And apologies if I pronounce anybody's names wrong. But anyway, Commissioner Berg. Commissioner Keller.
You're here.
Commissioner Dahlia.
Here.
Commissioner Beaucamp.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson, I take his absent, and Chair Haley.
Here. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, you know what? I didn't pick up an agenda. Yeah, I'm sorry. Do you have some out there? Sorry about that. I meant to do that when I walked in. Oh, you have one? Thank you. All right, and so we'll move on to an approval of our agenda for this evening. Do we have any? I'd like to.
Motion to approve.
Oh, hold on one second. I think we have a.
Sorry, motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Oh, your motion. And we'll just note that Commissioner Anderson's here. Sorry, we got started.
Right on.
I know, that's rare. Sorry. All right, so motion to approve.
Yes.
All right. Do we have a second? So you want to second that? We have a motion.
I'll second. I'll second that.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. And then looking at our agenda from our last meeting, which is 2 months ago, July 17th, 2023. Any changes for those minutes?
I move to approve, Linda.
I second that motion.
All right, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then public comments that are not on the agenda this evening. We have one. So if you'll just state your name and city of residence.
Hi there, my name is Sherry Summer, Louisville, and I'm running for mayor in Louisville. I've been canvassing neighborhoods, asking people what they love about our town, and they love the small town character and the community. That's why I'm running for mayor. The reason I'm here tonight is because I understand that the city manager's office and the city council are working to have better communication with their boards and commissions. So I've been visiting all the boards and commissions, and it's been super rewarding enterprise, just meeting people. Our staff is our greatest asset in the city, but also our residents and our boards. There's so much wisdom and knowledge that people have. And I'm the kind of leader, I like to find the people who know, who have the in-depth knowledge. And so that's why I'm here today. And I was participating in the city's Old Town Overlay, which I guess got postponed for many reasons, but it's very important to me that we preserve the Louisville scale and mass and footprint in our old town. Thank you very much. And I'll leave some flyers for you for later. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, our next item is public hearing for 741 Lincoln Avenue. This is a landmark and preservation and restoration grant. And we'll have a staff presentation.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, so this is the Landmark and Preservation and Restoration Grant application for 741 Lincoln Avenue. Public notice was met as required. And I just want to note before we get started that the owner of this property and the applicant is a member of the commission. He's not here tonight. Were he here, he would have recused himself, but just for the record. So the property is located in Old Town, just a couple of blocks west of us here. Conditions over time, so there's not a lot that's actually changed about this property. I've got a lot of the original brickwork, windows, footprint, as you read in your staff report. There was an addition in 2000 that is all of that. You can sort of almost see it from that picture there, but sort of that light pink color. The roof was raised and sort of another gable was added for an addition. In terms of landmark criteria, the structure was built in 1905, making it approximately 117 years old. The architectural significance, there's a lot of detail in your staff report, but it's certainly unique, or one of the very few properties with this styling and with this material in Louisville. And then it also has connections to immigrant and mining history, and then specifically the Ostrander family of long-term family ownership, also small business on Main Street that you read about, that bakery. So those are all of the different significance. And then again, physical integrity, much of the original architecture remains, and then the additions that are present are well differentiated from the old. So then moving on to the grant criteria. So all of the work that was requested was also identified in the historic structure assessment as needing to be done. They all relate to preservation, restoration, or rehabilitation. This is below the max amount, which is $40,000, so it also meets that requirement. And then just to note that the majority of these are actually reimbursements for work that's already been done, and the resolution number 17, series 2019, does contemplate that that's allowed within a certain time frame, 5 years, I think it is, and so this is all done within the last 5 years. So you've got there your table with the total cost of the project and then the total requested and total recommended. There was a public comment, a letter of support that you all received. Also, it's up on your dais. And then our recommendation is to approve Resolution 6, Series 2023, to landmark the property and name it for the Ostrander family. And that would also include the approval of a $5,000 landmark bonus. And then also to approve Resolution 7, Series 2023, for a grant in the amount of $16,532.65, and that would be the matching grant. Okay, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
Just one quick one. Curious, is it typical or atypical to perform some of these renovations prior to asking for landmarking?
Yeah, so you mean the grant specifically, like all the work that had been done
Correct.
for that? Yeah. So I think it's more common to do the work after the grants are approved, but I don't know that it's certainly allowed, and I know since I've been here, there's been 2, this is the second one, so it's not totally infrequent, but the majority are probably done afterwards.
I think doing it afterwards would more guarantee that you would get the reimbursement versus, because if for any reason there's other things that are priority and there's a lot of expense, the chances are that things you already did might not be prioritized. But that would be the only risk as a homeowner.
Right.
Any other questions or?
No.
All right. And there won't be an applicant.
No applicant
comment or anything.
presentation.
Okay.
I'm going to pause really quickly and just make sure, Ben, I'm going to switch it over to you so that they can see during discussion the other 2 commissioners. I just wanted to give you a warning since let's see if this works. Sorry, thank you.
Oh, you're good.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Any comments from the public? I don't think we have anyone online. Is that correct, Ben? Okay. Thank you. All right, and then we'll bring it back for discussion.
We did have the letter, the addendum that was submitted for
Right.
public record.
She commented that.
Oh, she did. Okay,
Or
thank you.
mentioned that, yeah.
Just checking in, can you hear me okay?
We can, yes.
Yeah, so I'm very supportive of this. I compliment and commend Commissioner Dunlap for his approach to this. And I thought it was well thought out and reasoned application. I'm very supportive.
I think this is a great property to landmark for a good many reasons. With the materials, it's one of the few brick homes, as was noted, the Queen Anne style home, which is, there's varieties of that in the town, so it kind of continuity of that, but also a unique take on that. It's in a historic district, retains a lot of its structure, as we see. It's interesting, I hadn't realized about the gabled bump out, and that, that was done so well, which was great. So, with the social history and all of that, I think it's just a great candidate to add to our landmark properties in Louisville.
Yeah, I think it definitely meets our criteria, and I thought it was interesting too that it actually got an award for the sensitive edition. So, so that would be something that wouldn't take away the integrity. I don't know that we would do that type of edition now, but it's notable. So, anyway, so yeah, 50 years or older definitely has most of its architectural integrity and great social history. So, yeah. Unless anyone has any differing thoughts, we can make a motion.
I move to approve.
I second that.
And I guess I should back up. Is this, do we just do it all for one? Because we need to, do we break it down or just do it all at one time? Because otherwise we should probably discuss the other pieces too real quick.
Right, so right now you would vote on the landmark only.
Okay, so we'll just do landmark only. Okay, that's great. So you can continue and we'll just know that that is for the landmark.
Affirmed.
Is that a second?
That's the second.
Okay. And we'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Berg,
Yes.
Commissioner Keller,
Yes.
Commissioner Dahlia,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Beaucamp,
Yes.
and Chair Haley.
Yes. All right, and then we'll look at the preservation and restoration grant. And again, this is for matching funds for things that have already been paid for and completed.
I move to approve a preservation and restoration grant as requested.
I'm in support of that as well. The HSA, did the work that the HSA called for. Was all a lot of structural repairs to maintain the integrity of the home, so I support the grant as well.
All right. So that'll be our second, so we'll do a roll call.
Commissioner Berg,
Yes.
Commissioner Keller,
Yes.
Commissioner Dahlia,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Beaucamp,
Yes.
and Chair Haley.
Yes. All right. So hopefully he'll be excited when he comes back. And then our next item is probable cause for Joe's Metal Shop, and we'll have a staff presentation.
Okay, yes, so this is a probable cause hearing to consider a request for up to $9,000 toward a historic structure assessment. So a little bit of background on this one. This is currently a city-owned building on city-owned property, about 2 parcels away from where it would potentially be moved. So I apologize that this is such a tiny screenshot. I'm happy to bring up a bigger map if anybody needs, but you can see the city shops, which is to the east of the intersection of 42 and Empire, sort of the old city property the city still owns, but sort of rented out. And it has this structure on it that's been used as storage since the 1980s. And then the applicant's property is that very corner triangle. So the corner triangle development is currently under review as a PUD, planned unit development, to make it into a distillery and event space, basically. And just to kind of give you the briefest overview of how this has been going on for almost about a year now. Currently, there's a purchase agreement signed by all parties, so the city and the applicant, which requires a historic preservation steps of a lot of the ones that you're familiar with, in order to move the building from one place to another. There are a number of off-ramps, so to speak, for the applicant and also for the city if things don't work out, such as, if they get inside the building for an assessment, were you to approve this grant, and it was really gnarly in there, and just what the plan wasn't gonna work. It's a good example. But the reason that we needed a purchase agreement to be signed to kick all this off is so that the applicant could actually be the one to present their case and to be the applicant formally. Otherwise, it would have been the city. So that's just the very brief background. And also to note that per the purchase agreement, the assessment would include an analysis of the viability of actually moving and rehabilitating the structure. So in terms of the conditions over time, we have a few photos from 1950, which you can see there, and are also in your staff report. And then you can kind of get a little bit of a sense of the building as it sits today. So it was built in 1948, 75 years old. The architectural significance, it's a pre-engineered metal building, so it certainly speaks to, some folks, maybe that's not the most interesting thing, but I think it's actually pretty cool. It's probably unique in the city, and it definitely tells a really specific history about what was going on in Main Street and with metal fabrication at the time, and also buildings in general, right? It has that unique architecture and material. And then, of course, there is also this really interesting connection between the architectural and the social significance in that it was originally a metalworking shop. So it has also a Tomeo family connection, which is one of the sort of famous families in Louisville at this point because of their association with the museum campus. It also has a connection to the city, like the municipality's history, given that it was once part of the museum campus. Wasn't the museum campus then, but that pad that's in the middle of that area, that's where this building used to sit, so that's the old foundation for it. And then also, it has this history of adaptive reuse, having been moved from that location over to city shops to be used as storage, and then potentially continuing that story here with a third use. So physical integrity, it has the original structure, of course, as you saw, a number of the original windows, the front door, the front garage door and the front door are not original, and certainly it does need rehabilitation and restoration just based on a site visit alone. Apparently that's my end of presentation. I should have had a slide about what we recommend. So as you know from reading the staff report, staff definitely recommends approval of this assessment. I'm happy to answer any questions about the background or anything about the history, and then we also have an applicant who I'm sure would like to make a presentation and be available for questions.
All right, any questions for staff? All right, thank you. Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Can I ask a quick question? Was there a previous assessment on the building before it was moved in 80s?
Not that we have a record of.
I assume not, but.
Yes. Yeah.
Good question. Anything else? All right. Thank you.
So Amelia,
Oh.
just to be clear, the owner has an opportunity to get an off-ramp if the building can't be moved?
Yes, exactly. So this is all sort of sitting aside the preservation piece that you all have like direct purview over, but exactly. So the purchase agreement that we worked out with the applicant and city staff and then was approved by council. So that was sort of like a months-long process even to get there. It has an off-ramp. I don't remember exactly the language, but there are several off-ramps. One is if it's not viable to move the structure per the assessment, if it's not viable for the specific use that the applicant would like to have it serve. And there are a few others based on timelines. So, and I'm happy to bring actually up the details if you're interested. But for example, if the city or if the applicant doesn't submit a certain type of application and get approvals and all that, then it also wouldn't go through. And likewise, the applicant also has their ability to sort of off-ramp is the only thing I can think of, but sort of, stop this whole process if it becomes unviable for them financially or for any other reason.
So is there any sort of feasibility assessment about the probability of this going through once we invest in assessing whether or not it can be moved and actually putting money into making that happen?
So tell me if I'm answering your question. The assessment itself will include, I mean, it'll have structural information like, most of our assessments do. And that will include evaluating whether it can be moved and whether it would survive that move, and also whether it would be able to be rehabilitated. That has to happen first. That's the next step, and that has to be completed before they can move on to requesting a landmark or a grant.
Mm-hmm. I guess really what I'm more asking is, assuming we invest as a city and move the structure, the feasibility of the business ultimately using this for a meeting space or hall or part of the ongoing business concern they're trying to move it for. Is there any sort of sense of how realistic that is, or?
Okay, so that specific question is probably best for the applicant, so I'll let them kind of talk about their sequencing. I think from our perspective, we feel pretty comfortable with the way that the agreement is set up, that, any grant funding that would have to go through, first of all, is an assessment, so that is a certain level of protection. I think there's probably some amount of risk in the fact that this is moving a structure, and anything could happen in that process with the business involved and with the city involved and with the structure. But in terms of the viability of how it fits into their overall business plan, I definitely think that's a perfect question for the applicant.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you. And then we'll have the applicant presentation, and if you'll just state your name and city, that'd be great.
Do I need to hit that first? Do I need to hit this first? Oh, I'm good, okay. Okay. I'm Andy Johnson with DAJ Design at 922A Main Street. I also live in Old Town Louisville at 920 Lincoln Avenue. I am so excited to present this to you tonight. We've been talking about this for a very long time, and this is one of those projects that's just pure fun. That was a really great kind of taster of the history of this building. You have to read the history. It's so Louisville. It couldn't be any more Louisville. So the Ptolomeo family were involved. However, we don't even know who Joe really is, but it was Joe's Steel Shop forever. This is a decorative steel fabricator that did railings, kind of all the stuff that we put into homes now, and then did a lot of other types of steel work around Louisville. It's a very early version of a pre-engineered metal building. It's all welded, and it's all using real small common pieces of steel and literally wrapped in rusted metal. It's about the coolest building. And I have been in love with this building personally ever since I figured out where it came from. So the story is in 1984, and I don't know if this coincides exactly of when the Historical Museum was established, but the story goes that there was that expansion that was planned, and so you can tell how long we've been talking about that expansion, that addition to the museum. And this building wasn't exactly the prettiest building on Main Street, and was proposed to be moved. Well, at that time, it became part of city property, and so what a better thing to do than take a building that looks like a storage building and move it to the Public Works facility. And so it got put on a proper foundation, a gas line and a water line got run to it, and it housed fertilizer for decades. What a shame. It is such a cool building, and it is largely original. So when my client, Ironton Distillery and Craft House, came to me and said, hey, we're going to buy the old Louisville glass property over on Empire Road, will you look at doing the design for it? As we got into it, and I realized where they're from, they're in Rhino in Denver, and they are currently occupying an old artist commune that were all steel sculptors and all welders. And so they have all this great art within their yard. And this building looks like it literally should be at Ironton right now. So anyway, it seemed like a perfect fit. And so I pitched it to Bridget, then pitched it to Amelia. We all visited, and it just kind of kept rolling, and it seemed like the right thing to do. And so we're all really excited about this, and I hope you guys are too. So where is it? All right, so this is the old Louisville Glass building as we know it, if you've been here in the last 20 years. And it is that kind of odd triangular shaped property, right as that what used to be the entire property, which included the storage facility. It used to be part of that whole property that abutted the Public Works building, but then when they subdivided this triangular lot got kind of left over, and it's been a really hard lot to develop, and lots of people have tried. This fit of industrial production, distillery, and then having a public face seems like the right thing to do for this particular parcel. So I'm giving you a little sneak preview of the PUD. No one else has seen this, so just for you guys. And the goal is that we create a destination for this business that has a strong connection to the downtown area. We are counting on the Highway 42 improvements to create better mobility by foot and bike to this location, given that there will be now 2 potential bike paths along Highway 42 with safer crossings. We feel like this site's going to be pretty well energized. There are a lot of trail connections. You can see that kind of right in the middle of where that site is right now. It's not fully there yet, but we are counting on that to happen and hopefully coincide with the construction of this property. So it's a peculiar property. When it was originally the larger parcel and it was annexed in around early 80s, we think it was around 84, that red line was established as a no-build line. And so the goal was that western part of the parcel was essentially an area that wouldn't have any buildings. And the idea was that with the open space that surrounded it, that you would still have that kind of continuous buffer from along Highway 42 that felt really rural. We'll be presenting this to Planning Commission and City Council about whether or not that no-build line is still an important aspect to the property. But what we are proposing, and this fits perfectly within the Ironton model, is that they actually want garden space and a really nice landscaped open space that's pretty significant, where they actually grow a lot of their ingredients. And so we actually are going to maintain that western part as open space. And so that part that's kind of that light green remains just open. And we're proposing to take that city-owned parcel right at the tip and also landscape that with an orchard. And have a development agreement that allows them to maintain it, irrigate it, and make sure it stays beautiful. The goal with Joe's Steel Shop in terms of its location is to be located close to that western part of the parcel, and you can see it in yellow where it's pointing, saying building. We looked at a lot of different sites on this property. We really felt like if there's going to be an investment from the city in terms of not only the HSA, but then a subsequent landmark request and a grant funding request, we want this building to be front and center. We want it to be visible from Highway 42, and we want it to be a story that can be told without having to go find it. So that ended up being its location. Our goal with it is to provide road and vehicular access along the north side, so the back side of the building. But you primarily engage with this building on foot and bike, kind of like you ride your horse up to the front, tie it up, and go in. The goal with the building programmatically is to be a special event space. So it could be Friday night pizzas. They do amazing pizzas. It'll probably be a very big component for their event business. They do a lot of weddings. They do a lot of corporate events. It's also going to be the backdrop for where they will do concerts. And so it'll have this kind of multi-use function. I have visited with the chief building official here in Louisville. We talked about how we're going to try to maintain the character of the building without updating it to the point that you don't recognize it. And so we have a strategy from a building code perspective of how we'll be doing an adaptive reuse of that structure. So these are a couple slides of how we're developing the rest of the structure. So the big building is the distillery building. Just to what will be the south or to the right of that is the event and what they call the tasting room, which is essentially like a restaurant. The red is a circulation core that connects into the distillery but goes right through the two components of the event and tasting room, and it's also what collects people on bike, on foot, and then also from the parking lot as the front entry. These are some initial concept sketches that we've worked through. These are mostly around the event center, tasting room, and the distillery. Just showing some character sketches of what's been kind of brewing in our minds around what this building will look like. And this is where they are now in the Rhino area in Denver. And you can see if you know Joe's Steel Shop, like it literally looks like it came from this site. We're going to be incorporating a lot of the sculpture that was created on this site, bringing it over, creating a sculpture garden along Empire and along the multi-use path that'll be on Empire that'll connect to that front entry. So these are some of the images of some of the items that we're going to be bringing over. This is Joe's Steel Shop. So it, at first glance, doesn't look like much to look at, but it is super cool. Obviously, we'll be doing a new garage door. We believe that was done in the 80s when it got moved. Obviously, we'll have a new person door going in. That is not original. All the glass, however, is original. There are some back doors that are kind of not in use that we may make operational, we may not. But the goal with this structure, and this was a part of my conversation with the chief building official, is that we actually want this interior to really come through. Like we want the whole building, not just the outside, to be kind of this cool antique-y sort of feel. We really want the character of the structure to be maintained in and out. So these are the trusses you can see that are fully welded and really, really pretty unique. There are obviously some structural loading issues with some of the structure. However, we are going to do a full analysis of the structure structurally. We've started to collect a little bit of information ahead of this meeting just to make sure our engineer knows what's coming. And in terms of the glass and the siding and things like that, we're starting to develop our resources around how we're going to do some of this restoration. So we did meet with a building mover that we have worked with. If you remember when we moved the building from Lincoln to Lafarge, that's Gerald out of Nebraska. So Gerald came out, took a look at the site, feels very confident that he can move the building, which is great news. He moves buildings like this actually quite frequently. And so the pathway is down the old railroad spur that goes to the north of the storage facility and then onto the site right at that northeast corner and then straight down to the site. So it's a pretty straight path. So we have a high degree of confidence that we can move it. It's just sort of a matter of how well is that glass going to hold up? What are we going to do about some of the glass and putty restoration? We do think that there may be asbestos content in some of that material. So just further testing for us to figure out what that is. The rest of this presentation is largely around the PUD. It's not really about Joe's. I'm happy to share it with you, but really my presentation ends there, and I'm happy to answer any questions should you have any.
Yeah, this does sound like a really exciting project. So I'm glad you were able to kind of be on the front end of remembering the building was back there and making that connection. So, yeah, because I think I had forgotten that that was what was on Main Street. And I don't think most people probably don't even know what was ever there. So, oh, that we still have it. So it's huge. So, any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I had no idea of the history or that structure even existed. How long have you been aware of it?
Since '03,
Okay,
since moving to Old Town.
yeah.
Yeah. If you go to the Historical Museum and you look at the curb cut right north of the it's still there. It's like the building needs to go right back there. But they still have the driveway entry where they would do deliveries. And that patio is the old foundation of that building. It's pretty cool.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I find this pretty intriguing, that there's a reuse opportunity for this one, and I've always kind of wanted to see what it was and what it could be as far as being removed from where it used to live, and I understood that it was just being used as storage, and that's as much as I could put together with it. So it seems like it'd be a good life for it. It'd be my encouragement to try to keep, again, the kind of the history and culture and look and feel and everything as much as possible, which it sounds like you would be looking to do. I'm assuming a 3-season event center, or you have to come up with some other energy code sort of
That's exactly
handshake
right.
deal?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what Chad and I came up with.
Assumed. Can I ask a question? And you might not know this or might not want to share it. Anyways, who would you be having do the assessment on that for structural?
It'll be Glenn Frank Engineering, so Jesse Shalinsky, who has done all of our historic preservation work.
I spoke with him a few weeks ago, and he mentioned that he had done quite a few things with you. So I was curious if that was it or not. So.
When they moved it the first time, they didn't take the windows out. Like, there's no way to like take them out and then put them back in.
No, there's no way.
Yeah, 'cause it
No,
seems like if it
it's
was
all
done-
original putty glaze.
Seems like if they were able to do it, we should be able to do it. Right.
It's impressive the windows made it
Yeah.
the first time through the move. So I would think if anything were to go, it would be that. So hopefully make it this move.
Let's just pat them
If
up
it
or
goes.
something. Do you know what the original door material was? Like, what did that look like? I wonder.
I don't. It's a little hard to tell from the historic photos. It kind of looks like a roll up like this, but I think it was overhead. We'll find out more when we dig in with the HSA. There may be some attachment points for rails that we might discover. But the photo that Amelia was showing is about the best photo that we were able to find. It was very much a secondary building. It was not, it actually was the second building on that site. The original was, I think they called it the Big House or something like that. It was either a commercial or residential building that was right next to where the Historical Museum was. And that went away for some reason. So this one was built, I think it was 42, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I think I didn't have many questions. I was just thinking the metal you would think would be easier to move to than like a wooden structure, just as far as
Very light.
right, and not getting out of whack, or I guess you kind of bang it back into place or something. I don't know, but yeah, it seems like an easier building to move than some of the other buildings we've moved. So that all seems really promising as far as the actual technique of getting it down the road. So, and it's just nice that it's that close, like a very, like you couldn't have picked a better location to move it.
It's less
so,
than 1,000 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the mover that we intend to work with, he does move a lot of agricultural buildings. And they are all metal buildings.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice to see, it's nice to see a commercial building being preserved, you know, and put into use. It would be more public. It's been preserved, it's been there, but I'd imagine most community members have no idea it's been there.
Yeah.
You know, when we think of commercial buildings being preserved, we think of Main Street and just off Main Street. So to have this be more public facing, I think is really exciting.
So there is no floor structure? It's literally just sitting on a pad?
Yep. Yep. Pad and just a short frost wall.
Yeah, and I think the location too, as far as probable cause and landmarking, all that kind of stuff, possibly down the road, like the location is really good too, just as far as being prominent where, like you said, people can see it and it ties directly into Louisville's Main Street and all that stuff. So yeah, so I think it's an exciting project.
Was there any original signage on the structure?
That is a great question, Marty. If we could find it, we would love to know, because we would love to identify this as Joe's Steel Shop somehow. So if we can't come up with it, we'll present something for the commission to consider, and see if we can find a good match for the building. But it really needs to be identified in some special way. I think more than just a blade sign, like I think it needs to be on the building. Yeah.
Any questions for Commissioner Dahlia or Keller? I just want to make sure you get input or questions if you have any.
You might be muted.
Look like it's muted.
I don't believe we're getting you through, Randy.
Randy's trying to speak, it looks like.
Do you have any clue why Randy would not be in?
It doesn't show that he's muted, and we've been able to hear him the whole time.
Can you hear me now?
There you are.
Dan,
Yep.
thank you for
Oh,
waiting.
Thank you. Two quick questions, and Andy, thanks. Appreciate the presentation as always. From a business side, is Ironton moving, or is this opening up a second location for them?
They're moving entirely, all their facilities to Louisville.
So all to Louisville.
All to Louisville.
Okay, so a very positive show of, making this happen.
Yes.
And then from your standpoint, how would you assess the risk of moving the building in terms of, and it's hard, I know it's hard to say, and I know you talk to the mover, but if you've seen the structure, you've seen the building, do you think the likelihood of success is very high, medium, crapshoot? How do you call it?
So, great question. We are looking at not moving entirely, but we're going to be lifting and moving two other structures. One just was before a subcommittee. And these are all wood structures with plaster and stucco, actually. Those buildings are trickier. They have a higher risk of cracking and of needing of repairs afterwards. This building is light, it's flexible. The way he will move it is he'll have support beams basically clamped to the steel structure. And it just provides such a better and more kind of complete way to lift and transport the structure, which I have no doubt was how they moved it in the 80s. The moving technology really hasn't changed that much for a very long time. So I think the probability is very high, to answer you more directly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions before we bring it back for discussion?
Nope.
All right. Thank you so much. And then we'll open it to public comment if anyone, well, no, right now, I'm sorry. That is actually our next piece, is if anyone in the public has a comment, just state your name and city of address
I
again.
thought that was my time. So anyway, I just think this is the first time I've seen this. It looks really amazing. I love the convergence of a lot of different pieces, and it just seems wonderful. But since I'm here, I have some questions. I think it'd be really neat to do an educational component on this. And I don't know if that's part of your work or if it'd be somebody else's work or if that would be something you do, but I just think it'd be wonderful to include that in this project. And I'm also wondering, since it's along Highway 42, will you be involved with the LRC as well? Yes, okay. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Sherry Summer, Louisville.
And I think generally the museum does more educational pieces, but it's definitely something that we can encourage or collaborate with or whatever too. So, yeah. And I guess my question to you would be, were you saying like educational along the process or educational after it's completed, or?
You know, I think both. Now that you ask, you know, I think there's a sense of people are kind of like, oh, what's going on in downtown? What's happening with retail? What's happening with restaurants? And, you know, I think it would be really great to publicize this as we go along and just give people like, I think, you know, it's nice to have a feeling of hope and anticipation to get that out there. Thanks for that question. And then also just like, well, I have 2 kids and I love education. I've done a lot of teaching. And I just think it's really great to put it forward so that people understand. Because if you don't have good explanations, you don't understand. So thank you so much.
Yeah, of course, thank you. Yeah, I think a lot of people will be very interested in it. And there'll be a lot of people that will just show up and be like, oh, where'd that building come from? So that's a good point. All right, so we'll bring it back for discussion.
I think it's a great project. I think the visibility of moving it to the corner is ideal. It's perfect. I'm fully supportive.
I'm where Marty is.
I like the fact that it could be tied into its original location and that it is still something that you can see the remnants of where it once was. I think that's probably one of the coolest, neatest parts about this one. And then that you can actually tie it back together and show that it has another use and that it's been put back in the community. So I think it's a pretty neat project, to be honest.
Agreed. I think it's a good idea to see what it takes to move it and, you know, move forward with the project.
I think as far as probable cause, meets all of our criteria, but definitely something that we're willing to invest that grant for the HSA just to see, you know, what can be done as far as the moving and all the pieces like that. So I think that's a great investment as a city from the HP fund. So, yeah. So if anyone would like to make a motion.
I'd make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
And we'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Berg,
Yes.
Commissioner Keller,
Yes.
Commissioner Dahlia,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes? If
Yep.
it's Anderson?
Yeah, sorry. Commissioner Beaucamp
Yes.
and Chair Haley.
Yes. All right, so thank you, and we look forward to future updates and which you're always good at, so thanks for being here. All right, next item is our work plan and subcommittee updates, and we'll have staff. And actually, I can just rattle that one off. Do you want me to do that real quick? The HBC training?
I have found it. I have found the slide. Sorry.
Oh, good.
I actually have a little bit more. So yes,
Yep,
you can
that's
go ahead
great.
and start with the training if you'd like, though. The subcommittee training update.
Yeah, there's a training video to do. So,
What'd you do?
next month. I don't know that we will do the exit ticket. I don't know that that was really, does anyone feel strongly about yes or no? Or does it make you feel more accountable if you have to do it? Or, I feel like some were like,
Maybe we can just,
optional.
maybe we can just watch it and I'll come with some thoughts on it,
Okay.
you know?
So there won't be, we'll just come next month and just watch it, or just having watched it, and we can, I'll do a pop quiz.
Okay.
Just kidding. No, we'll just discuss it and just, it should be interesting. That's it.
Okay, so just a coloring book subcommittee update. A few things. So first of all, we have officially closed out our work with the consultant. I think we have 8 or 10 final images, which is great. They need some updating, some erasing of some little pieces and stuff, but we either will do that as a subcommittee or there's some staff who have stated at least that they know how to do it, so that's exciting. And I think right now we're going to use them as sheets, and then maybe roughly by the next landmark, maybe we can put together a coloring book. But I just wanted to let everybody know I think we've come to a good semi, maybe even full conclusion for the coloring book. And I also just wanted to share, so on Saturday, the museum had its vintage baseball game. And I was there tabling for planning in general, and I had some preservation stuff, and I had the images. I don't know if y'all remember, but when we were looking at these and trying to decide how would kids relate to them, you can see it's not super big, but it runs the gamut. So there up at the top left was this young kid who was like, wanted the exact color red for the Coke sign and was super precise. And then his sister is at the bottom, who was a little younger, and just like went like this and had equally as great of a time. So I think that's given us a lot of information now. If we ever do something like this again, we know kids just will do whatever they want, apparently. But anyway, so that was an outreach opportunity, and also really honestly a big hit, the coloring sheets. So it was really nice to have. So then some general staff updates, a few things. So I wrote a brief memo on this, but I did update the alteration certificate, created a form. We didn't have an application form previous to this, at least not that I could find. And so just based on the experience of a couple of subcommittees recently, I thought maybe it would be really good to have something really concrete rather than a bunch of different email references. And so I went ahead and made that, and the applicant, and the reason I'm letting you all know is just it's a process improvement. So I think that's a positive thing, but also because y'all are on the subcommittees, you'll now be getting materials, but also a base application form that will hopefully very clearly give you the information about what's being proposed to be demolished, what's being proposed to be added, and all of that. And then I also made an alteration certificate guide that very much uses best practice for preservation standards, put it all into a little handout so that we can get those to people sooner than later. And actually had an email with somebody I've been talking to, a designer who said, oh, we're interested in this. And I said, here's this guide, like first touch point, so that hopefully that starts to get a little bit easier than maybe what it's been in the past. So I made similar updates to our grant form. So we did have one previously, updated it, so hopefully we'll, and this is very much, changing as we go, trying to make it easy for people to use. So those are just some things, some process improvements. And then I also just wanted to let you know the most recent, or tonight's historic structure assessment staff report actually was a lot shorter than they usually are. And so I took out some pieces. And so if there were things that you thought, oh, where's that one section? I really rely on it. Let me know, email me. We can talk about putting things back in. The one change that I wanted to make that I didn't, that I would love some feedback on now or later if you're not ready, but I am considering to take the historical background section out of these reports entirely and only put a slightly beefier bullet point version of what's the most important thing in the criteria table, because there's a summary in the report and there's also the report. And so I do spend like 20 or 30 minutes summarizing the report that has a summary in addition to the summary bullet points. That seemed like an opportunity to not do that. However, you all are really reliant on that, then absolutely something, if it saves you 7 people time, then it's worth that time for me. So I don't know if you have any feedback now. I'll finish out my updates and then pause and see if you guys do want to share thoughts on that. But I also just want to let you know we do have a new planning manager, which is exciting, and we still have 1 position open. So we're not fully staffed, but I am starting to try to turn back to the work plan. This is the first meeting which I'm doing that. And then we also have a new planning clerk. Ben is here with us tonight. He's been going to be doing our minutes and helping set up these meetings and everything, which is also going to be really helpful. So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that historical background piece or feedback in general about the reports.
I would just say move forward with it and let's try it. I mean, if nothing else, try it out for 3-4 months and just evaluate at that point.
Okay.
Would be
Agreed,
my
yeah.
thought.
Okay.
I support, that sounds like a good plan to me.
I will do that. And please, if you're really needing it or something else, we can add those back in. But I think that's a great plan. I appreciate that very much. And I'll go ahead and do it. Okay, so I think these should be my final updates. So see, this is actually part of why I wanted to update, because this is a busy month and a half that we've had. We had a window change and a rear addition at 1133 Jefferson. We had a shed at the rear of the property at 1013 Jefferson, and then the southeast corner of 612 Jefferson changed. So all of those were released at subcommittee. And then we had 533 East, the structures were released. That was clerical issue with what was being reviewed in July. So subcommittee reviewed those. And then 805 Lafarge had a bit of a back and forth, but the windows eventually were approved administratively, but not before there was, again, some back and forth that I'm hoping to kind of clean up and like make a little bit more efficient for everybody involved. And then we have our regular meeting in October. We do have items scheduled, so I'll try to send out my scheduling quorum email, but if you know that you're not going to be able to make it, please do let me know. We already have quorum in November, so we will be holding that meeting in November as scheduled. Any questions about updates? Great.
So did that count as your items from staff as well?
That's it, yes, that's
Okay.
the whole thing.
Perfect. All right. Any updates from commission members that we need to know of?
None here.
All right. So our next item is to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Very much.
Or infatuation is gonna keep you up from the kind of love that I love you so. You're my sunshine, boy. Hey, just my angel. I will never be so. I just you